Vincent Irving, aka DJV, with DJs and entertainment with Mr. Charles Williams, piano extraordinaire.
Oh man,
Been at it for a long time, man. When did it first start for you?
piano playing started for me when I was at the age of probably 4 or 5. My mom played,
Okay.
and we had this old upright piano. Matter of fact, it was actually a player piano, and it
Okay.
had these big pedals that a person would use their foot. I think it was a player piano that you could have used in the old days, like the early 1900s.
Oh boy.
This was my grandmother's. We lived with my downstairs from my grandmother. So my mother would do the boogie woogie thing, and I liked it. It's just like if you ever seen the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx who played Ray Charles, and he was a little boy and he was around that man, and that man told him to go dun 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 dun. Well, see, that's kind of like the same thing happened with me, and so we had records, and as I got older, 6 and 7, we had a record player, and I liked all these old records my mom had. It may sound weird, but she had Johnny Mathis. She had a guy named Roy Hamilton. There was a pianist named Roger Williams that played some nice, and I just liked that piano sound. And I can even still hear those songs in my head because that's how much I listened to them.
Right.
And so I was a unique child because I just didn't like piano. I like strings. I like music and movies. And my uncle was a musician and singer as well, who wrote a famous song that's still popular today. But we'll get into that. So as time went on, I would hear something and I'd go to the piano and try to find it. So evidently I had an ear, but I didn't know how to read. So my aunt, Ellen Ruth Ellis, who just passed away about a little over a year ago, November of 2019, was the one that gave me my first lessons, my uncle's wife. And she was an in-law. She could see that, and I started taking lessons from a lady named Sylvia Burdette in Kansas City, Kansas, on 4th and Greeley, and right behind Trinity AME Church. There was her house was like 3 or 4 houses down from the back of that church. And I would walk, because I lived on the north end of Kansas City, Kansas, and I would walk to piano lessons, and lessons were like 75 cents.
Wow. You dating yourself.
Yeah, man. Hey, McDonald's hamburger was only 15 cents.
Wow.
But you think about it, but the cost of living,
of course,
was really low back then. I mean, if my mom and dad spent $40 for groceries, we had like 15 bags of groceries.
Wow.
Maybe 10 to 15 bags. So things were really cheap. I mean, God, unbelievable. But so that's how that developed. And she was good. She got me started, but she wasn't tough enough on me. So my mom sent me to another teacher as I became 10. And her name was Dorena B. Kane, and she was the pianist at First Baptist Church over in Kansas City, Kansas, on 5th and Nebraska. She was a sergeant piano teacher. She was like real sergeant. You talking about? I sat up there and I would cry, and she would be on my case for not practicing. And I appreciate that now. She died of cancer when I was 13.
Wow.
And I decided I would never stop I would never stop playing piano. I stopped lessons. I didn't take another lesson until my first year in college.
Wow.
But I knew enough to play with bands, groups, jazz bands, different things like that.
Some of the groups or bands you played with in between before you went to college?
Oh, God, yeah. It's just so many. Well, we got to go back into my history again. When I turned 11, I learned how to play the trombone.
Oh, wow.
For 13 years. Reginald Buckner was my teacher at Northeast Junior High School in Kansas City, Kansas. and he discovered me. He was a music teacher at Dunbar North Elementary School, which used to be located at 6 and Roland. You can't, it doesn't look like nothing of a school existed there now.
Right.
But he walked in the classroom and saw me strumming this thing called the auto harp. And you would strum, we have like a G7 in the book, which meant a G7 chord. I had no idea what all that means. I just knew, I never had no idea what that meant. It's just that if I saw the G7 where the words were, I knew to strum it there.
Right.
How do you know that? And
Right.
he asked the teacher, could he see me?
Right.
And he had this little thing called the melodica. You blow in it and the piano keys on it.
Right.
And he said, can you play this? And I played Joy to the World.
Go figure.
And he said, how do you know how to do that? I didn't have no music. I just played it.
Right.
I don't know. I said, I just know. And
Right.
so he put me on a little melodica team, and we did a Christmas concert. That was all corny, and we had our little capes on, you know.
Elf hats.
That was the old school days, you know. They
Right.
would whip our behinds if we got in trouble or anything, you know.
Right.
We could get away with nothing. But so then they had a summer program when I was going to 7th grade, and I was going to play clarinet. I wanted to play saxophone, clarinet, and they did not rent clarinet. So he said, and Reginald Buckner ended up leaving Dunbar, and he was the teacher at Northeast. So when I went to Northeast, they was my teacher.
Go figure.
He got me started on trombone. Of course, he remembered me, and that's how. So I already had background in piano, so I knew how to read music, and he got me started on that. He actually taught me how to blow into it and everything. He was so comical because I could not get a sound out of it.
Right.
And he showed me a way to do it. And he stayed there my 7th and 8th grade year, because junior high school back then was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
Right.
High school was 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Mm-hmm.
So he got transferred to the University of Minnesota my 9th grade year.
Okay.
Okay, guess who lived down the street from him? Prince.
Really?
Prince was just a kid.
Mr. Rogers. Go
Prince
figure.
grew up, and they saw him graduate, and actually he was one of his students in college.
Wow.
And Prince, when he came down to Kansas City, which I heard that he did, he sat in the blue rooms a few times. Just
right. Check out the musician.
One of my friends met, her name was Felicia, and she met, her name was Felicia Smith back then. But she said she sat down and talked with him, and he found out that we all had the same teacher. He was thrilled.
Wow.
He wanted to come and do some clinics.
Wow.
So talking to him about doing that, but you know, he ended up dying.
Right.
And so that was just really sad, because I was hoping I'd get a chance to really meet him, because I thought we would have talked, me and knowing that we had the same band teacher. So I've talked to his wife. You know, he died back in like 89 or something like that. And I remember I was at work. You know, we worked at the post. I was at South Street. I got a call paper, and they had his picture in there that he had passed away in his 50s. You know,
right?
And it was just so heartbreaking. But you talked about other bands. Of course, then I went to Sumner, and I was under Leon Brady.
Right.
I was in the band, jazz band. I became first trombone player in my sophomore year. I was so good with it. And we went to Paris in my junior year. And
really?
We went to Paris. We were the only Black band invited to this Paris International Jazz Festival amongst 4 high school bands that competed in 3 college bands. And each one run a college and a division and a high school. And we won the high school.
Wow.
As the best jazz band high school in the world.
Golly, that's beautiful. And so can we put a year on that? You know what year that was?
That was 1972. That was June of 1972.
Beautiful.
And I was 16. And so we got notoriety around the world. There was no social media.
Of course.
Of course, they had put us in the paper. And, you know, if I would have thought about it, I would have brought some pictures I could have shared with you on the screen.
Well, that's fine. You can always send them to me.
I'll send those to you.
Yeah.
And of course, even before that, Leon Brady had a uh, connection with a lot of jazz artists, such as
Right.
Terry was one of them. Clark Terry, the great Clark Terry, who was the first black band member to play on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Wow.
So they would feature him a lot. If you go on YouTube, you will see video of him with Johnny Carson would feature him because Clark Terry played with Count Basie, Oscar Peterson, Dizzy Gillespie, Duke Ellington.
Wow.
So he was very well, and I met him when I was at Northeast. I came to hear the Sumner Jazz Band play a concert with Clark Terry, and Brady made you sound like you was professional. That's what with us,
right?
And so there's a few of us left around. Several of the members of the band are deceased. We just lost one about a week and a half ago.
Wow.
One of the bass players, and it was so hard to hear that. Because we all been like family all these years. We talk or run into each other, but and then in between that, I was playing in R&B groups. There was, I can't even remember the names of them. There was groups with Turner House, Community Center on 3rd and Stewart, right by Juniper Gardens projects.
Right.
Clark Terry. All these guys came in the 70s, like 71, 72, 73, 74 to do jazz concerts in the park. They would spend like 2 or 3 days at Juniper Gardens and give us techniques on jazz and how to play jazz and how to do jazz improvisation. I mean, so we were around some heavy weight. Yeah. I'm talking about Dizzy Gillespie came. Wow. Max Rhodes, Clark Terry, Cannonball Adderley, Nat Adderley, Ernie Wilkins, Frank West, who was actually born in Kansas City, but was one of the saxophone players with Duke Ellington as well.
Gee whiz.
And plus a whole lot more. Charles Mingus came to Kansas City. Michael Berniak, Rich Madsen, who taught at North Texas State University, was a great euphonium and valve trombone jazz player. He's deceased, but me and him used to write each other.
Wow.
Because I was a trombonist, and he just liked me. And I treasured a lot of those moments. And when he died, I was just heartbroken, And I think I saw it on Facebook. And I had lost contact with him. But it was a whole lot more. Max Roach came twice. The National Endowment of Arts funded these. They had a lot of programs because Martin Luther King had been shot in the late 60s.
Right.
And so a lot of programs had opened up to blacks because that's just that time. Black people were starting to move into better homes. Your TV shows were increasing. The Jeffersons, All in the Family. This was that time, and things were changing, and comedy and TV and everything was changing. So there was a lot of opportunities in that era.
Right.
But, there was still racism.
Of course.
But nevertheless, thank God he still took care of me, took care of my family and my mom, And, so it was a multiplicity of groups that I got a chance to play with. So we as teenagers, and you may be in our 19 or 20, we would play the music. Those guys would bring their music. They would teach us how to, have clinics. We had like a 1 or 2 hour clinic, and they would do concerts, mini concerts, and all the jazz musicians from Kansas City, Kansas, Missouri, they would come, and because they knew each other. Kansas City has a rich jazz history.
Right.
So I didn't understand it then, but now I do now. And a lot of those guys that I remember way back then, as I got more into the jazz world in the 90s and more involved with it again, I was playing with some of those guys that were much older, but I remember them when I was a teenager.
Right.
And I would tell them, I said, I remember you. And they said, oh, yeah, I remember that. A lot of those guys are going on. This season's going on. Ahead. So now I'm with the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra.
Okay.
I have been one of the original members that started in 2003, and I've been the pianist since it started.
Wow.
That's 18 years. Unfortunately, since the pandemic struck, we were not able to. We had to cancel our last season and a half at Kaufman Center.
Wow.
But we've had opportunity to back big artists as well. The last major one we met back was Benny Golson,
Right.
who wrote the tune Killer Joe.
Right.
And oh, what an honor to meet him and play and talk with him
Right.
and the manager that brought him. He's in his 90s.
Man.
He's so full of wisdom and so humble. He knew all the greats, Charlie Parker, Clifford Brown. He actually wrote a song called I Remember Clifford.
Right.
Very nice jazz tune. We featured him on that night. I remember at Kaufman Center. The New York Voices, Ann Hampton Calloway, Houston Person, Ernie Andrews, and Bobby Watson was featured with us a couple of times.
Right.
And Bobby Watson and I, going back to the Turner House series I'm talking about, he was sitting on the stage playing his horn then.
Wow.
Remember, Bobby would tell me, he's like, Charles, man, this is what I want to do, what Clark Terry's doing, and
Right.
play jazz and do clinics. And so that's what he ended up doing. He ended up going to play with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers in his last days. And Bobby got that experience. And now Bobby Watson is a jazz legend here in Kansas City.
That is true.
And so we're still friends to this day. And he calls me Chaz. He said, what's up, Chaz? Chaz. When he says that.
Right.
His wife, Pam, we all went to Sumner High School together.
Go figure.
So lots of key people. Craig Lindsay, who is a producer that was in that band.
Right.
Craig is a friend of mine, lives over in Kansas City, Kansas, and he produced for Lee White, MC Hammer, Kareem Hardish. I can't think of his name. He played on Different World.
Yeah, Kadeem Hardish. I mean, Hardison.
Hardison, yeah. And
Yep.
then he produced for Norman Brown. Norman got a couple of Grammys through some of Craig's production. And then he took the song by Aaron Hall, I Miss You.
Mm-hmm.
He produced it and got a platinum.
Wow.
He got a platinum and gold. And he's worked with a lot of young people. This is a real close friend of mine. I still keep in touch with him today.
Right.
So I formed a lot of groups. I played for probably every singer in this city.
Right, for sure.
Ida Macbeth, Queen Bake, Angela Hagenbach, Sharon Thompson. These are locals.
Right.
And Misha Roberts, who recently sang with us with our group called Genre.
Uh-huh.
A young man in the band that was with me about 3 years before he made it big. His name is Blair Bryant.
Okay.
And Blair is now playing, he's on the top 40 charts.
Right.
Like along with Julian Bond and all those guys.
Right.
He's got to travel with some major artists overseas. And this young man, I knew that he wasn't going to be with us long because he's super talented. And so we have rehearsals here in the house. I've had the pleasure of meeting a lady named Sherry Scott, who was the only female singer with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Wow.
And there was a song that came back out in the 70s called I Think About Loving You.
Okay.
Remember that song?
Yes.
Think About Love.
Mm-hmm.
But she wrote it and recorded it.
Wow.
She's right here in my basement, right there. Practiced with her, and we invited her. I told Gerald Dunn, who is the assistant manager at the Blue Room, that we needed to have her for Women in Jazz Month because she was related to one of my cousin's husbands. That was his brother.
Right.
I said, what would be so good to get somebody in with a popular song? You got a lot of baby boomers that still remember this song.
Right.
You know? And she did a show. She came here. We rehearsed. I had, I'm trying to think who I had on there. Justin McCoy, Larry Thomas, and DeAndre Manning on bass, and myself. And we did the show that night.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like I said, about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe.
Got you.
And just to have her in my home, and just, she told about stories about Maurice White and Philip Bailey.
because I've definitely seen you at jazz sets. How did you get so heavily involved in the jazz scene, besides, of course, from your
Just
past?
making myself known, presence known.
Mm,
A lot of people get known when they go to the jam sessions or word gets out. If
right,
you're a really good musician, you're a person of integrity, and you do well.
right,
Take care of your people, you pay them right, you don't cheat somebody out of their money, which a lot of jazz artists are cheated a lot.
right,
Guys say, hey, yeah, man, I pay you $50, blah, blah. And then they say, well, man, where's my money at? Oh,
right.
man, this is, a lot of people get done wrong.
Of
Also, I
course.
want to mention, I was talking earlier about my uncle. He wrote the song Earth Angel. And
Really?
his name was Curtis Williams. He sang with the Hollywood Flames and the Penguins
Wow.
back in the 50s. So if you go to the Doo-Wop Society of Southern California online, just type that in.
Gotcha.
You can scroll down and you can see where it says the Penguins.
Right.
And to tell the whole story about him. He died. I met him only once when I was a little boy, about 11.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to the house and he sang and played all that night.
Wow.
And then, not too long after that, he just died. I think.
Right.
Got a telegram that he was sick,
right.
And then the next morning he was gone.
So music, man, has just been all your life and even your family. Because also you had mentioned your son is also.
Son, yeah. Matter of fact, all my kids were involved in music growing up.
Right.
But my son is into it. He's in LA. His name is Aaron D. Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Check him out on Aaron Grooves on YouTube. And he's got a lot of content there, where he's got millions of viewers and followings, and he's tap dancing, he's writing, he's singing. He's just got a multiplicity of things, and he's really good with the kids. He taught music out there for a few years. And he was getting ready to do a 250 something date set up for the year of 2020, and the pandemic struck.
Of course.
Actually go to China. He has done a percussion thing at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
And sometimes when he would come to Kansas City to do some drum clinics up at his old college up in St. Joe,
mm-hmm.
at Missouri Western, I think that's what it is. And
correct.
Then, he did some out in Blue Springs, but we would meet down to the Blue Room and jam together. So those were some good days. And then I have another son named Charles Williams Jr., who's a drummer. Charles, my friend Craig, I was telling you about earlier, who produced for a lot of big people, got him hooked up with a lady named Sylvia out in California, and she had a lot of connections, and
awesome.
Very good singer and a drummer. And he went out there and laid a CD all by himself. He did the background and the lead. And Clive Davis Jr. was looking at him. And Clive Davis worked with everybody.
Yes.
See? So Junior was looking at him, but my son got married and got kids, and
moved
he did
on with
the right thing by taking on the right priority and taking care of his family.
Right. Along with that, what are you doing now? What is?
Right now, I am a board member now for the Jazz Museum.
Okay.
I've been with them since July of 2019. I joined. Actually June, and so we have board meetings with that. I've done a lot of online content with the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. Matter of fact, we have a recording to do next week on some things for Mary Lou Williams, who was another native of Kansas City jazz pianist.
Right.
So we're going to do the Zodiac Suite next week, and then so there's some things on YouTube. If you key in Kansas City Jazz Orchestra, you'll see he's done some videos on some of the members of the band. And so me and another guy named Sam Wiseman just did the first ones. So you will put in Kansas City Jazz Orchestra on YouTube, and you should be able to pull up some of that content. And you'll see some of the shows we did. We did some shows with Wycliffe Gordon.
Right.
He's a great trombone player. As well, and I'm trying to think some other people that came through that we did some things with. It was just so many. Jim Mayer, who is the teacher at Kansas Community College now, helped start that band with Don Hall.
Mm-hmm.
is connected with Halls,
Yeah. Gotcha. Yep.
uh, Crown Center. Don
Right.
Hall started that group, and Jim called me and said, "Charles, would you like to be the pianist?" And I said, "Yeah." And so the rest is history. And then Jim left and they turned it over to a guy named Kerry Strader,
Mhm.
great baritone saxophone player that lived until he got, I mean, he was doing really good and then he got, struck with cancer and he died
Gotcha. Gotcha.
6 or 7 years ago. And so now Clint Ashlock is the artistic director, doing a great job as a young guy,
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many connections. There's a
Right. For
guy
sure.
named Will Matthews that plays with the Count Basie band. He's a good friend of mine. And actually, we were in a group called Mood Swings, and he got the call to audition for that group, and he made it. And
Right.
he's been with that group over 20 years now, and so he is known all over the world. And he still lives here in Lee Summit. I talked to him last week.
Right.
And so, life has been good. As I retire, I did 31 years at the post office.
Yes, that's very well.
I am doing what I like. I teach online since the pandemic. I had to stop my students from coming to my home, but I've been able to open up.
Right.
And do some things online. And now actually it's opening up. I got a student in Dallas. I got a student in Minnesota. I got 2 of my nieces I'm going to pick up in California.
Right.
So this is opening up. I got one student that's just auditioned for Berkeley College. I work with. These kids are doing so good that I work with. So I'm a jazz academy. I work at the Jazz Academy at the American Jazz Museum under Clarence Smith.
Okay.
And I teach jazz piano down there. So we're social distancing, and we've only limited to so many students. So I've got 6 students every Saturday from 1 to 3. I do 2 classes with 3 students.
Okay.
These kids are fantastic. They're learning a lot. So this week we got Tia Fuller, who used to play with Beyonce, is coming in.
Oh, wow.
She'll be here. She's the one that played on the movie Soul. She's doing a saxophone part.
Yeah, really?
You'll be here, and then next week we're gonna have on the 16th. They're gonna have Denise Times come in.
Mm-hmm.
Is a great singer also in the jazz world. So I can see things open up a little bit, but they're only limiting so many people to come to these concerts. Maybe only 50 at the GM Theater.
Right.
I'm just putting in a plug for the American Jazz Museum. We just got a new jazz director, Rashida Phillips, and actually had a meeting with her today. So things are looking good. It's so much. I know I've left out so much stuff.
But you've given so much.
Yeah. So I just enjoy doing what I do. I'm a member of a church called Abundant Life Church. And so recently got auditioned for their praise team, and I made it. And so I'll do my first gig with them March 14th. So,
good.
Well, I guess you don't want to say gig, but
right.
But you know what I mean,
for lack of better terms, right?
Life is good. I did have shoulder surgery last year, and that kind of set me back for a little bit. So I had to get this arm operating again. I couldn't play or nothing for a while.
Wow.
But now, everything's back to where it was, and so we're just maintaining.
That's good. Well, I want to say this, I appreciated the little mini concert you did for Easter. I guess that was last year. Yeah. You did it online on Facebook. That was a beautiful thing. And I shared it, and like everybody I shared it with, man, they were like, wow, beautiful. Wow. It was a good deal.
I did several of those. I lost some of my friends during the pandemic. One was one of the friends that went to Paris with Reginald Watkins, a great pianist here, gospel pianist, played all over Kansas City. Coming up in April, I will be online. I did a virtual concert already for Johnson County Community College. It'll be the Charles Williams Jazz Trio. I think they're going to air it April 13th. You can kind of look out for it. Go to the Johnson County Community College Spring Interlude or Winter Interlude.
Okay.
Doreen Mirande puts those on. She was the late wife of the great Frank Smith, who used to play piano here in Kansas City. so much.
Like I said, you give them a lot. So how can people get in contact with you, maybe to see some of your stuff, or if they want to take lessons from you?
They can email me at Charles Williams Piano. Just remember my name and the instrument I play, charleswilliamspiano@gmail.com. Yeah. I do have a website, charleswilliamspiano.com.
Okay.
It's kind of empty because of the pandemic. There's nothing for me to post. But I guess there's still some content on there. I have a CD that I released about 4 years ago, Flavors of Jazz. It's on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, all those different things. You know, so I sit here and I produce, I make soundtracks, I do anything for, churches that don't have music, they need a soundtrack, I'll do it. They need music for their choir. If a kid needs an audition background tape for their solo they need to do for college, I can do that. Teach piano. More or less, I work with kids and I work with adults that already know how to play but want to enhance.
I got you.
As I get older, I will start me some adult classes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, man. Well, I surely appreciate it, DJs and entertainment. Mr. Jazz extraordinaire, piano extraordinaire, and good buddy from the post office.
Everybody say party pop!
We're gonna learn a new dance. It's called the Party Pup Shuffle. And here we go. Pause to the right, to the right, to the right. Clap. Pause to the left, to the left, to the left. Clap. Turn it around and wag that tail, wag that tail. Pause to the right, to the right, to the right. Clap. Pause to the left, to the left, to the left. Clap. Turn it around and wag that tail, wag that tail.
We're gonna party with party pop, party pop, party pop. I'm gonna party with party pop, party pop, party pop. We're gonna party with party pop, party pop, party, 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 party. You're gonna party with party pop, party pop, party pop. I'm gonna party with party pop, party pop, party pop. We're gonna party with party pop, party pop, party, 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 party.
Everybody loves party pop, I know I do. I'm DJ C-Style, the music profile with LC3 Entertainment.